Morphine blurred the pain in my legs, but it couldn't dull my husband's voice in the hall, the one he used for celebrating a successful deal. He said, "She's pregnant." I lay still, not from the car crash, but from those words. The woman he named wasn't me. My name is Ilara. I am 34, a strategy analyst for Arrowverse Dynamics, and I woke up to the smell of antiseptic and the dull, rhythmic beep of machines. Everything was blurred at the edges. A watercolor painting of a Seattle hospital room left out in the rain. A deep, throbbing ache radiated from my legs. A pain so profound it felt less like an injury and more like a new, permanent part of my anatomy. I had been in a car accident. That much. My foggy brain could piece together. The wet slick of the road, the screech of tires that sounded too late, the sickening crunch of metal folding like paper. Marcus was beside me, my husband. His hand was gripping mine, his knuckles white. He looked exhausted, his usually pristine suit rumpled, his dark hair mussed. He looked every bit the devoted, frantic husband. When my eyelids fluttered, his head snapped up, a look of profound relief washing over his face. "Ilara," he breathed, his voice thick. "My God, you're awake. You scared me half to death." I tried to speak, but my throat was sandpaper. A doctor came in, a woman with kind eyes and a clipboard. She started asking me questions I could not follow. "Can you feel this? Do you know where you are?" Marcus stood up. "I will just step outside, give you some privacy. I need to make a call. Let my mother know you are awake." He squeezed my hand again, kissed my forehead, and slipped out into the corridor. The doctor continued her checks, but the morphine was pulling me back under, blurring her voice with the rhythmic beep of the heart monitor. I was floating, suspended between consciousness and oblivion, but through that haze, a sound pierced through. Marcus's voice. It was coming from the hallway, just outside my door. The tone was wrong. The frantic worry was gone. This was his deal-closing voice, the one I heard when he landed a big account at the firm. It was energetic. It was happy. I strained against the drugs, forcing my mind to focus. He was talking to his mother, Eleanor. "Yes, Mom. No, she is still out of it," he said, his voice low but clear. "Honestly, it is better this way. Mom, Sophie is pregnant. We did it. It worked." I stopped breathing. The beep of the heart monitor felt deafening in the sudden, cold silence of my mind. Sophie, his personal assistant, my best friend, the woman who had helped me pick out my wedding dress. I could hear Eleanor's shrill reply, tinny through the phone but unmistakable. "Oh, thank God and air. Finally. Now we have to make sure she signs those papers. Do it quickly. Marcus, before she is fully lucid." The world tilted. The physical pain in my legs was nothing, a distant echo compared to the brutal surgical strike of those words. We did it. It worked. This was not an accident. The door opened. Marcus came back in, his face rearranged into its mask of concern. He was holding a clipboard with a sheaf of papers. "Hey, love," he said softly, brushing hair from my face. "There are just some insurance forms, hospital stuff. You know, red tape. We just need a signature. It is just a formality." I let my eyes droop, pretending to be deeper in the drug-induced fog than I was. He held the papers in front of me, close enough for me to read, even through my blurred vision. My breath caught. The title was not about insurance. It was in bold, black letters, Emergency Medical Power of Attorney and Financial Guardianship. They were not just celebrating a pregnancy. They were waiting to unplug me, financially and literally. This was a plan. He put a pen in my hand. "Just sign here, Ilara." My hand, which had been so steady analyzing aerospace contracts worth billions, began to shake. But it was not with weakness. It was with a sudden, icy rage. I let the pen clatter to the blanket. I let my head loll to the side. I let out a low moan and forced my eyes shut, feigning a descent back into unconsciousness. I heard Marcus sigh, frustrated. Damn it, we will have to try again later. But I heard him, and I knew. They thought the crash had broken me. They thought the painkillers had made me deaf and blind. They were wrong. The patient was gone. The analyst was wide awake. The next 14 days were a performance. I became the consummate victim. My world shrank to the four walls of that beige hospital room, but my mind, sharpened by the morphine-induced calm and the icy fire of betrayal, expanded. I was no longer just an analyst. I was a hunter. And this room was my blind. Marcus and Eleanor were relentless. They played their parts with sickening dedication. Marcus was the worried husband, his face a mask of strained exhaustion. Eleanor was the fussing mother-in-law, bringing soup that smelled like bleach and smoothing my blankets with hands that felt like ice. They rotated their shifts, a two-person guard, ensuring I was never truly alone, or so they thought. The guardianship papers were their true objective. They became a constant, looming presence. Ilara, the hospital administrator, really needs this sorted, Marcus would murmur, his brow furrowed with fake concern, holding out the clipboard. We need to handle the insurance. It is just so you do not have to worry about the bills, dear, Eleanor would add, her smile tight. Let Marcus take care of everything. You just rest. I developed a repertoire of defense. The first time, my hand trembled violently from the medication, producing a meaningless, spidery scribble that was nowhere near my name. I am sorry, I whispered. I cannot seem to hold it steady. The next day, I accidentally knocked over a full glass of water, soaking the documents just as Marcus placed the pen in my hand. Oh, no, I moaned, tears of frustration welling up, tears that were entirely convincing. I am so clumsy. I am so tired. His jaw tightened, a flicker of impatience he quickly suppressed. Another time, just as the pen touched the paper, I feigned a sudden, agonizing spike of pain in my legs, crying out and passing out from the exertion. They were getting frustrated. I could smell their desperation, metallic and sharp, beneath their cloying perfume and cologne. The moment they left, even for a few minutes, my performance ended. My purse had been retrieved from the wreckage. They had looked through it, of course, taking my primary phone, to let me rest, as Marcus had said, but they had not known about the backup phone I always kept. A simple, nondescript device tucked into a hidden lining, a habit from dealing with sensitive Arrowverse data. My fingers, which were too weak to hold a pen, moved quickly over the small keypad. My first call was to Mr. Fordham. He had been my father's lawyer and closest friend. He was old school, utterly discreet, and fiercely loyal to my father's memory. Fordham, I whispered, the room dark, the only light from the monitor beside my bed. I am in the hospital. It was not an accident. There was a heavy silence on the line. Then, his voice, gravelly and serious. What do you need? Ilara. A private investigator. The best. I want my car analyzed, top to bottom, and I want a full financial audit on Marcus. Everything. It is done, he said. Fordham's updates came via encrypted text. The first one confirmed my suspicions. He tried, a week ago, attempted wire transfer of a very large sum from your private trust. My contact at the bank flagged the signature mismatch. The account is secure. I had known Marcus was bad with money, but this was a new level of desperation. The most difficult day was when Sophie came. She arrived carrying an offensively large bouquet of lilies, their scent filling the room with the smell of funerals. Her eyes were red, puffy, her hand resting protectively on her stomach, though nothing showed yet. Ilara, she sobbed, grabbing my hand. I was so worried. When Marcus told me about the accident, I could not believe it. I looked at her. This woman I had called my friend, this woman who was carrying my husband's child, conceived in betrayal. I watched her tears, analyzing them. They were real, but they were tears of fear, not sympathy. Then I saw it, resting against her collarbone, tucked just inside her blouse, was a glint of gold. It was my mother's locket, the one I had been given on my 18th birthday, the one I thought I had lost 2 months ago, the one I had cried over. Marcus must have stolen it and given it to her. I stared at it, the coldness in my chest freezing out the last flicker of doubt. "Thank you for coming, Sophie," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "You are a true friend." The final text from Fordham came 2 days before my scheduled release. It was just one sentence, but it stopped my heart. "PI report confirmed. Your brake lines were cut, deliberately, professionally." I closed my eyes. The rhythmic beep of the monitor was the only sound. They had tried to murder me, and now they were in this room every day, trying to finish the job. 2 weeks of playing weak were over. It was time to get out. The day I was discharged, the sky over Seattle was a bruise of purple and gray, threatening a storm that never quite broke. Marcus and Eleanor flanked my wheelchair like prison guards disguised as concerned relatives. They had been adamant about the arrangements. I was not to return to the house Marcus and I shared, the home I had paid for. "It is just not safe, Ilara," Marcus had insisted, his hand resting heavy on my shoulder. "You need constant care. Mom and Dad have the guest suite set up on the ground floor. It is better this way. We can watch you." Watch me. That was the operative phrase. I knew exactly what this was. It was isolation. It was control. If I went home, I might have visitors. I might answer the door. In the house of Arthur and Eleanor, I would be a prisoner in a gilded cage, cut off from the world until I signed those papers or died trying. "You are right," I whispered, letting my head loll forward as if the effort of arguing was too much. "I just want to sleep." I saw the look of triumph pass between mother and son. They thought I was broken. They thought I was surrendering. They helped me into the back of Eleanor's sedan. Marcus sat in the front passenger seat, while Eleanor drove. I slumped against the window, pulling my heavy wool coat tight around me, closing my eyes as if drifting off. But beneath the folds of the coat, my hand was active, gripping the burner phone. While they chatted mindlessly about dinner plans and the weather, I was executing a financial execution. I texted Fordham, "Execute immediate freeze on all joint accounts, checking, savings, investment portfolios, everything. Initiate the transfer of the trust fund management to the new firm immediately." I waited, my heart hammering against my ribs not from fear, but from adrenaline. A moment later, a vibration against my palm confirmed the order was received. Then, a second vibration. It was the new report from the private investigator. I opened it, shielding the screen with my coat. The text was a litany of failures. Marcus was not just bad with money, he was drowning. He had accumulated over $200,000 in gambling debts, mostly from high-stakes underground poker games in the city. The report detailed where my missing money had gone. It had not just vanished, it had been funneled into high-risk venture capital schemes that had collapsed months ago. And the rest, it had gone to Sophie. Rent for a luxury apartment in Belltown, designer handbags, the very car she drove. My husband was paying for his mistress's life with his wife's inheritance while plotting his wife's murder to pay off his bookies. I typed one final instruction to the PI before we arrived. "Investigate Arthur. He is a senior systems engineer at Arrowverse Dynamics. My brakes were cut professionally. Find out if he has been in the lab after hours." The car slowed as we pulled into the driveway of the sprawling suburban house that belonged to my in-laws. It was a large, imposing structure that felt devoid of warmth. Arthur was waiting at the door. He looked like an older, harder version of Marcus, his eyes scanning the car with a calculating gaze. Marcus opened my door. "We are here, darling." Easy does it. They orchestrated a production of getting me into the house, settling me into the guest room, which was, conveniently, the furthest room from the front door. I allowed them to fuss, to adjust pillows, to act the part of the loving family. "I just need to rest," I said, my voice weak. "Please, close the door." "Of course," Marcus said. "I will just be in the kitchen with Mom if you need anything." He stepped out, leaving the door slightly ajar. I lay perfectly still, counting the seconds. 1, 2, 3. Then, I heard it. The distinct, sharp chime of a notification from Marcus's phone. It was the custom alert he had set for his banking app. I held my breath. There was a pause, a silence so thick it felt heavy. Then, the sound of footsteps stopping abruptly in the hallway. "What the hell?" Marcus's voice was a harsh whisper, stripping away the polished veneer he had worn all day. I crept out of the bed, ignoring the pain in my legs, and pressed my ear to the crack in the door. "What is it?" Eleanor's voice was low, urgent. "The accounts," Marcus hissed, the panic rising in his throat. "All of them. Frozen. I just got an alert." "Access denied. Insufficient authorization." "What do you mean, frozen?" Eleanor snapped. "Did you trigger a security flag?" "No, it says client request. It says the primary account holder initiated a lockdown." "She is asleep, Marcus," Eleanor whispered furiously. "She has been asleep in the car for an hour. She is in a coma practically. It must be a bank error. Call them. Fix it. We need that transfer to clear by tomorrow, or the guys from the casino are going to start breaking legs." I moved back to the bed and pulled the covers up to my chin, a cold smile touching my lips. Let them scramble. Let them panic. The siege had begun. Life inside the house was a suffocating, lavender-scented prison. Eleanor was a constant, hovering presence, bringing me lukewarm tea I did not drink and fluffing pillows I was not using. My real phone was kept safe on the kitchen counter, and any calls were screened by Eleanor, who would coo that I was just too weak to talk. Visitors were told I was heavily sedated under doctor's orders. I was completely cut off. The bank error facade lasted less than a day. On the second morning, Marcus stormed into my room. He did not bother with the gentle husband act. His eyes were bloodshot, and he threw the guardianship papers onto my lap. "The games are over, Ilara," he snarled, his voice a low growl. "You did this. You froze the accounts." I recoiled, widening my eyes, mustering the image of a terrified, confused invalid. "What, Marcus? You are scaring me. I have not done anything. I have been right here, with you. It must be a bank error, like you said, a security protocol because of the accident." "Do not lie to me," he hissed, leaning in close. I could smell the stale coffee and panic on his breath. "They said it was a primary holder request. That is you. Fix it. Unfreeze them. Now." I shrank back against the pillows. "I do not even know how." "I cannot remember my passwords. Marcus, I can barely remember my own name half the time." I let a tear slip down my cheek. "Please, I am so tired. My head hurts. Why are you yelling you should call the bank? You handle it. Please." He stared at me, his jaw working, a muscle twitching in his cheek. He was trapped. He knew I was lying, and I knew he knew. But he could not prove it, and he could not force me. Without my signature, without my verbal authorization. He was just a man in a room with a sick wife. He could not access a single dime of my money, which he now desperately needed to cover the money he had already stolen. He snatched the papers from my lap and stormed out, slamming the door. That evening, I executed Phase 2. I had an old tablet I sometimes used for reading. The battery was terrible, but I had charged it with a portable pack under my blankets. I had factory reset it, save for one app a simple, hidden audio recorder that would sync to a cloud server using any available Wi-Fi. When Eleanor brought me dinner, I asked for help. "Eleanor, could you get me my tablet from my purse? I thought I might try to read." "My old one." She retrieved it, her expression softening slightly at this sign of my normal weakness. I fumbled with it, then set it on the nightstand. Oh, I forgot. The Wi-Fi. I do not have the password. It is just Arthur Guest 2022, she said, distracted. Later. I hobbled to the living room, using my cane for show, and sat on the sofa. I read for 10 minutes, then, accidentally, left the tablet on the end table, wedged between a stack of art books and a lamp. It was a perfect, invisible listening post. That night, I did not sleep. I lay in the dark, my burner phone in hand, an earbud in one ear, listening to the feed. At first, it was just the murmur of the television. Then, after midnight, their real conversation began. It was Marcus, Arthur, and Eleanor, their voices tight with panic. The bank call was useless, Marcus said, his voice strained. She has to authorize it. She will not budge. The bookie called again. Arthur's gravelly voice cut in. He is done waiting. He gave me 48 hours. He said he knows where I work. Marcus, he knows where I work. And Sophie, Marcus moaned. She is hysterical. She just found out I cannot pay her lease next week. She is threatening to go to the police, to go to the media, to tell everyone about the baby. There was a long silence. Then, Eleanor's voice, as cold and clear as ice. Then the situation has changed, she said. The bank is not the problem. She is the problem. We cannot wait for her to sign. We have to increase the pressure. What are you saying? Arthur asked. I am saying a woman in her condition. She is weak, unsteady. Accidents happen in the home all the time. A fall down the stairs, an overdose of her painkillers. It would be a tragedy. My blood ran cold. They were not just going to wait me out. They were accelerating the timeline. I lay in the dark, my heart pounding, but my mind was a steel trap. They were planning to kill me, here, in this house. Just before dawn, my burner phone vibrated. A new text from Fordham. The PI report. Got it. Arthur was logged in the Arrowverse Labs restricted tool inventory 2 nights before your crash. He checked out a set of hydraulic line crimpers and a high-pressure brake bleeder. Specialized, proprietary tools, not available to the public. He logged them back in 6 hours later. He abused company property to attempt a murder. I closed my eyes. I had him. I had them all. And they had just given me my weapon Arrowverse Dynamics. The oral-only intel from my tablet was damning, but it was not proof. It was hearsay. To bring down Arthur, and by extension the entire family. I needed more. I needed irrefutable digital evidence of his actions. Eleanor had given me the motive for my next move, a fall down the stairs. I did not have time to wait. The next morning, I called for Marcus. I sounded weaker than ever, my voice a frail whisper. He came in, his face drawn and impatient. Arthur and Eleanor hovered in the doorway. Marcus, I whispered, you are right. I have been difficult. I know you are all stressed. About money. I want to help. A flicker of interest in his eyes. Eleanor moved closer. I cannot unfreeze the main accounts, I said, looking down. I do not have the strength to fight with the bank, but I have a smaller private account, one I use for my own projects. I can transfer you some money for expenses, a few $1,000s, just to help with groceries. The relief in the room was palpable. That is great, Alara, Marcus said, his voice instantly becoming warmer, more husband-like. Thank you. That helps. A lot. But I have a problem, I said, gesturing to my personal laptop, which I had asked Eleanor to retrieve. I cannot seem to get it on the network. Since the accident, I just cannot remember the passwords. Arthur, I looked at him. You are the family's tech expert, are not you? You work at Arrowverse. You must be brilliant. Could you just help me connect flattery and a request for help? He was annoyed, but the promise of a cash transfer was the bait. It is probably just the password, he grumbled. He had been working from home all day, his own company laptop open on the dining room table. He came into the room, grabbed the chair, and sat down at my desk, clearly exasperated. "It is Arthur Guest 2022, he said. I tried that. I lied. It just keeps spinning." He sighed, a heavy, put-upon sound. "Fine, let me check the router settings from my own machine. The network traffic in this room is probably being throttled." He went back to the dining room and returned with his own Arrowverse-issued laptop. He sat back down, placing his machine next to mine. My heart was a cold, steady drum in my chest. This was it. The tiny, wafer-thin USB keylogger receiver I had slipped into the back of his machine 2 days ago, during a moment of weakness where I stumbled against his work desk, was waiting. "You have to log into the company network to check router settings," I asked innocently. "I have to log into the VPN to get admin privileges on the router." "It is complicated," he snapped, clearly not wanting to explain. I watched. I saw his fingers fly across the keys, entering his credentials to log into his laptop. And then I saw him open the VPN client. He typed in his full Arrowverse username, and then his password. The keylogger I had bought online for $200, the one I had risked everything to plant, silently captured every stroke. He fiddled for a minute. There. I reset the connection. "Try it now." I typed in the password, and of course, it connected. "Oh, thank you, Arthur," I breathed. "You are a lifesaver." He grunted and left with his laptop. I did not make the transfer. That night, I waited until 2 a.m. The house was dead silent. I pulled my own laptop close. The keylogger had been transmitting a simple text file of his keystrokes to my receiver, now plugged into my machine. I had his login. I had his password. I was a strategy analyst. I knew my way around corporate servers better than Arthur, the engineer, ever would. I logged in. I was no longer Ilara, the invalid. I was Arthur, the senior engineer. I had his access. I went straight to the security archives for the restricted engineering lab. I queried the logs for the night before my accident, and there it was, a video file. I downloaded it. I watched it. Arthur, clear as day, signing out a set of hydraulic line crimpers and a high-pressure brake bleeder. My stomach clenched, but my hand was steady. Next, his email. I searched my own name. Ilara. A thread popped up. Subject: the Ilara problem. I opened it. It was a chain between him and Marcus, going back 3 months. Marcus: "The debts are too big. I cannot cover them." Arthur: "We solve the Ilara problem and her trust fund covers everything." Marcus: "She will never sign. She is too smart." Arthur: "There are ways. A woman who is incapacitated cannot refuse. Or, an accident can solve it permanently. I will handle my end." I methodically downloaded the entire email chain. I had the tool logs. I had the video. I had their written confession. I opened a new, anonymous encrypted email client. I attached the video file. I attached the tool log screenshot. I attached the PDF of the entire email thread. I addressed it to the CEO of Arrowverse Dynamics, the entire board of directors, and the head of the legal and ethics department, whose names I knew by heart. Subject: urgent criminal misuse of Arrowverse property and conspiracy to commit murder by Senior Engineer Arthur. I set a timer. The email would be sent tomorrow. At exactly 3 p.m., the digital bomb was set. The email to Arrowverse was scheduled. A time-delayed explosive primed for 3 p.m. the next day, but I knew that corporate malfeasance, even tied to attempted murder, could get buried in legal procedures. It was a clinical attack. I needed a visceral one. I needed the human element. I needed Sophie. I knew from my tablet's audio feed that she was unraveling. I had heard Marcus snap at her over the phone, his voice raw with panic about the frozen accounts, telling her the rent money was not there. She was pregnant, desperate, and trapped. A person in that state is not a conspirator. She is a liability. She was their weakest link, and I was about to use her to break the entire chain. I waited until I heard Arthur and Eleanor arguing in the study about their own looming debts. With Marcus out of the house on some frantic, useless errand, I pulled out my burner phone. I had memorized Sophie's number years ago, back when I thought she was my friend. She picked up on the third ring. Her voice was thin, reedy. "Hello." "Sophie." A sharp, terrified gasp. "Alara." "Oh my God, how? Marcus said you were not taking calls." "Marcus lies," I said, my voice intentionally soft, not threatening. I was not the monster in this equation. Not yet. "I am calling because I know, Sophie. I know you are pregnant, and I know what they promised you." Silence. Then, a choked sob. "I do not know what you are talking about." "We do not have time for games," I said, my voice still gentle, but with an underlying edge of steel. "I know they promised you my life, my money, my future, but I need you to understand something. You have backed the wrong side, and they are going to sacrifice you to save themselves." "No," she whispered, a pathetic attempt at defiance. "Marcus loves me. We are having a baby. Marcus loves money, Sophie, and he is broke." While I spoke, I sent her 2 text messages from my phone. The first was a screenshot of the main joint account, balance 0.0, account frozen. The second was a redacted summary from the private investigator, showing over $200,000 in outstanding gambling debts. "He was using my trust fund to pay for your apartment," I continued, hearing the small ping as she received the files. "He was using my money to buy you my jewelry. Now, I have cut him off. He has nothing. He is not just using you like he used me. He is just using you. Full stop." I heard her ragged breathing. "But, Eleanor, the family, the baby is the heir." This was the incision point. "Eleanor." I let out a small, cold laugh. "Do you really, honestly believe that Eleanor, a woman who sees the world in terms of bloodlines and balance sheets, is going to let her son's assistant raise her grandchild? You are an incubator. Sophie, the moment that baby is born, she will paint you as an unfit, gold-digging whore. She will take that child, and she will throw you out with nothing, and Marcus will stand by and watch her do it." No, she would not. She was weeping openly now, the sounds wet and panicked. "I heard them." I lied, partially. "They are terrified, and when they panic, they get dangerous. They tried to kill me. Sophie, what in God's name do you think they will do to you when you become an inconvenience?" A terrified wail. "What do I do? What do I do?" "You help me," I said, my voice hardening. "And I help you. I am offering you something Marcus cannot, a future. He is offering you a shared prison cell at best. I am offering you an escape." "What?" "What do you want?" "I want a recording. I need you to get Marcus to admit it. Get him on tape. I need to hear him admit he tried to kill me. The car, the plan, all of it. He will never. He is too careful. He is desperate," I countered. "He is losing, and he thinks you are on his side. Tell him you are scared. Tell him you need to know the plan is solid. Tell him you need reassurance. He is an arrogant man. Sophie, he will brag. He always does." "And if I do this," she whispered, her voice a thread, "I will give you what he promised, but what I can actually deliver. A one-way, first-class plane ticket to anywhere in the world, and $10,000 in cash. Enough to disappear. Enough to start over. Somewhere safe. Far away from Eleanor. You send me that file, and I will have the package delivered to a private locker for you. You can be gone before they even realize you are missing." She was silent for a long moment. I could hear her weighing the options. 2 hells. "I am more afraid of her than I am of you," she finally whispered. "Good," I said. "You should be." The audio file arrived on my secure server at 4 in the morning. I had expected a grainy 10-minute confession from a panicked Marcus. I got that. I heard him, pacing his office, finally admitting to the break lines, to the entire financial motive. But Sophie had not stopped recording. She had kept the audio running when Eleanor entered the room an hour later, furious at Marcus for his weakness. And what I heard next made the blood in my veins turn to ice. "She is playing," Eleanor's voice hissed, clear and cold. "She is the one who froze the accounts. She knows." That fall down the stairs I mentioned, we are accelerating the timeline. We are doing it tomorrow night, after Arthur's mess is handled, a tragic accident, a relapse. She is still so weak from the crash. Sophie had not just given me a confession, she had given me the timetable for my own execution. The digital clock on my bedside table clicked over to 3 in the afternoon. It was a silent signal, invisible to everyone else in the house. But to me, it was the sound of a guillotine blade beginning its descent. I lay back against the pillows, my breathing steady, listening to the mundane sounds of the house that were about to be shattered. Arthur was in the living room. I could hear the low drone of the television, likely some daytime news channel he watched to pretend he was still connected to the world outside his debt-ridden bubble. Then, his phone rang. It was not his personal ringtone. It was the shrill, demanding chirp he assigned to work calls. I adjusted the volume on my tablet, which was tucked under my blanket, broadcasting the audio from the living room bug. "Hello?" Arthur's voice was gruff, authoritative. "Yes, this is he, Mr. Henderson. To what do I owe the—" There was a pause, a silence that stretched so tight I thought it might snap the air in the hallway. Then, Arthur's voice exploded, no longer deep and controlled, but high and incredulous. "What suspended? On what grounds? That is absurd." I closed my eyes, picturing the scene. The CEO of Arrowverse did not make personal calls to fire engineers unless the offense was catastrophic. "Internal audit!" Arthur was shouting now, pacing. I could hear his heavy footsteps vibrating through the floorboards. "Misuse of company assets conspiracy. Who told you? I demand to see the evidence. You cannot just lock me out of the server." "Arthur." Eleanor's voice cut in, shrill with panic. "Arthur, what is happening?" "They are sending security," Arthur roared, ignoring her, talking to the dead line. "They are coming here, to the house, to seize the equipment. They are revoking my clearance, my pension. God, the pension." "They cannot do that!" Eleanor shrieked. "That is our income. That is everything. It is gone. Eleanor, it is all gone. They know about the tools. They know about the lab logs." The chaos outside was a symphony I had composed note by note. The house was dissolving into panic, but panic makes animals dangerous. The door to my room flew open with a crash that shook the frame. Marcus stood there. He looked like a man possessed. His hair was wild, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, sweat gleaming on his forehead. The veneer of the loving husband was gone, replaced by the raw, ugly face of a cornered rat. He held the clipboard like a weapon. "Sign it!" he screamed, marching toward the bed. "Sign it right now." I shrank back, clutching the sheets to my chest, playing the part one last time. "Marcus, what is wrong? I do not understand." "Shut up." He threw the clipboard onto the mattress and grabbed my wrist, jamming a pen into my hand with enough force to bruise. "No more games. Alara, no more delays. You sign this power of attorney now, or so help me God. I will break your fingers until you do." "Marcus, you are hurting me," I whimpered, looking at the door where Eleanor and Arthur had appeared, their faces pale ghosts in the hallway. "We need that money," Marcus yelled, his spit flying. "Dad is finished. We are all finished unless you sign this. Do it!" He tried to force my hand down to the paper, his grip crushing my knuckles. He was strong, fueled by adrenaline and terror. He expected resistance from a weak, bedridden invalid. He expected limp muscles and fragile bones. He did not expect me to grip back. My fingers tightened around his wrist, not with a tremble, but with a vice-like strength I had been hiding for weeks. I locked eyes with him, and I let the fear drain out of my expression, replacing it with a cold, hard stare. He froze. The confusion on his face was instant. "Ilara." I shoved his hand away with a sharp, violent jerk that sent him stumbling back a step, and then I did the impossible. I threw the covers aside. "What? What are you doing?" Eleanor gasped from the doorway. I swung my legs over the edge of the bed. I placed my feet flat on the floor, and slowly, deliberately, I stood up. I stood to my full height, no longer the broken doll in the wheelchair, but the woman who had built a career on seeing patterns others missed. My legs held firm. I had been walking around this room every night for a week, preparing for this exact moment. Marcus stared at me, his mouth slightly open, the pen hanging loosely from his fingers. He looked at my legs, then up to my face, unable to process the shift in reality. "You," he stammered. "You can walk." I took a step toward him, invading his space, forcing him to back away until he hit the dresser. I looked him dead in the eye, my voice low, steady, and dripping with contempt. "Your hands are stained with brake fluid, Marcus," I said, "and you really should have washed them before you tried to bury me." The room was a frozen tableau of shock. The three of them, Arthur, Eleanor, and Marcus, just stared. Their faces were a grotesque mixture of disbelief, horror, and a dawning, sickening understanding. The invalid was standing. The victim was not a victim. You are fine," Marcus whispered, the words barely audible. The clipboard with the guardianship papers clattered from his limp fingers to the floor. "I am fine," I agreed, my voice resonating with a clarity and strength that had been absent for weeks. "No thanks to you. You thought I did not know. You thought I did not hear you in the hospital hallway. Marcus." I turned my gaze to Arthur, who looked like his blood had turned to cement. "You thought I would not find out who in the family had access to specialized hydraulic tools." Eleanor was the first to recover, her lifetime of manipulation snapping back into place like a dislocated bone. She put on her mask of maternal concern, though it was cracked and peeling. "Ilara, darling," she cooed, taking a step forward, her hands outstretched. "You are clearly in shock. The accident, the stress. You are not making any sense. You are hysterical." "Stop," I commanded. The word was not a plea, it was an order. It stopped her cold. "Do not call me darling. Do not try to gaslight me. I am not hysterical. I am not in shock. I am, for the first time in years, seeing everything with perfect clarity. And your part in this charade. Eleanor, it is over. The party is well and truly over." As if summoned by my words, the doorbell rang. The sharp, sudden chime cut through the suffocating tension like a razor. And just like that, the fragile unity of their conspiracy shattered. They turned on each other, their eyes wide with their own private terrors. Marcus went white. His gaze shot to the front door, his mind instantly leaping to the Arrowverse security team his father had just mentioned. He saw his career, his access, his entire professional facade collapsing. Arthur stumbled back, a low groan escaping him. He did not hear a doorbell. He heard a threat. He heard the heavy, knocking fists of the bookies he owed over $200,000 to. The men who were done waiting. The men who were going to break his legs. Eleanor's hands flew to her throat. Her fear was different. She thought it was Sophie. She pictured her son's pregnant, hysterical mistress standing on her doorstep, ready to scream her accusations to the entire neighborhood, bringing a social ruin that, to Eleanor, was worse than any financial one. "Who is that?" Marcus hissed, his eyes darting between me and the door, trapped. I allowed myself a small, cold smile, the first real smile in weeks. "I am not sure who you were expecting," I said, walking past them. I did not limp. I walked with the steady, confident gait of a woman in complete control. I left them in the bedroom and moved down the hallway, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. I reached the front door. I looked back over my shoulder at the three of them, huddled in the hallway like guilty children. "I believe they are for me," I said. I invited a few guests to our little thank you dinner. I turned the deadbolt. I opened the door. Mr. Fordham stood on the porch, his face grim, his trench coat damp from the Seattle mist. He was not alone. Standing just behind him, one on each side, were two uniformed officers from the Seattle Police Department. Their expressions were neutral, professional, and utterly implacamous. "Mr. Fordham," I said, my voice clear. "Officers, thank you for coming. They are all here, just as I said they would be." Fordham and the officers stepped past me into the house. The atmosphere curdled, the panic of moments before solidifying into a new, dreadful silence. Arthur, Eleanor, and Marcus were still clustered at the end of the hall, trapped between the bedroom they had fled and the front door, which now held the architects of their ruin. Fordham, a man who had spent 50 years in courtrooms, was completely unfazed by the domestic chaos. He walked into the living room, placed his leather briefcase on the coffee table, and clicked it open. He moved with the unhurried precision of an undertaker. "Mr. Marcus," he said, his voice cutting through the stillness. He pulled out a thick, bound document and slid it onto the table. "This is a petition for divorce, filed on behalf of my client. It cites, among other things, aggravated financial fraud, infidelity, and conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree." Marcus just stared at the document, his breath hitching. Fordham did not pause. He pulled out 2 more envelopes. "Mr. Arthur and Mrs. Eleanor," he said, his gaze shifting to them. "So these are temporary restraining orders, effective immediately. You are to have no contact, direct or indirect, with my client. You will also find courtesy copies of the civil suit being filed against you for damages, conspiracy, and emotional distress." You cannot do this," Eleanor whispered, her hand clutching her pearls. "This is our home." The first police officer stepped forward, ignoring her completely. He looked at Arthur. "Mr. Arthur, are you Arthur?" Arthur gave a stiff, terrified nod. "Sir, you are under arrest for the criminal misuse of proprietary company assets and conspiracy to commit assault." The officer began to recite his rights as he moved to cuff him. The second officer turned to Marcus. "Mr. Marcus," she said, her voice firm, "we also have a warrant for your arrest on charges of attempted murder." It was that word that finally broke Marcus. The spell of paralysis shattered, and he erupted. "Murder!" he shrieked, his voice cracking. "You have got nothing. She is lying. She is a hysterical, manipulative bitch who is trying to ruin us." He pointed a shaking finger at me. "Where is your proof? You have no proof. It is my word against hers. She is sick in the head from the accident." "The accident you caused?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "Prove it," he screamed. "You cannot prove a damn thing." "Proof is a funny thing, Marcus," I said. I reached into the pocket of the robe I was wearing, the one I had put on when I knew they were coming. I pulled out my burner phone. "You see, you are loud when you are panicked, and so is your mother." I pressed play. The audio was crystal clear. It filled the silent, horrified room. First, Marcus's voice, frantic, talking to Sophie. The break lines. I did it perfectly. She never should have survived. And then, the second clip, the one that sealed it. Eleanor's voice, cold and sharp, from my tablet bug. Increase the pressure. A fall down the stairs. "We are doing it tomorrow night. A tragic accident. We finish the job." The sound of his own voice, his own mother's voice, planning his wife's murder. echoed off the expensive art and the plush carpets. Arthur's face, already pale, turned a sickly, ashen gray. He stopped resisting the officer and went completely limp, a puppet with its strings cut. Eleanor let out a sound I had never heard, a high-pitched, inhuman keen that was half shriek, half sob. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed onto the floor, a heap of expensive cashmere and shattered pride, her hands clawing at her face. Marcus was frozen. The officer took his arm to cuff him, and he did not even flinch. He just stared at the phone in my hand, his mind finally, truly, understanding that he had lost. The officer snapped the cuffs on his wrists. The metallic click was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. As they led him toward the door, he stopped. He turned. He looked right at me, and the vacant shock in his eyes was replaced by a pure, undiluted hatred that was almost beautiful in its honesty. "You bitch," he spat, his voice low and venomous. "You think this is over? I will get out. And when I do, you will never, ever be safe." I looked at him, at the man I had once loved, the man who had tried to kill me for money, and I felt nothing but a cold, final pity. I shook my head slowly. "I do not think you understand, Marcus." I said, "You are not just worried about the police." "What?" he snarled. "Your bookies," I said. "The $200,000 you owe them. I sent them a little care package this afternoon. The full, unredacted report from my investigator. Your name, your father's name, your debts, and, of course, this address. I even sent them a link to the Seattle Police Department's arrest log. They will be very happy to know exactly where you are." His face, which I thought could get no paler, drained of all remaining color. The hatred was gone, replaced by a new, more profound, and more primal terror. He understood. I had not just sent him to prison. I had sent him to a place where prison would be the least of his worries. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. "Take him away, officer," I said. I stood in the living room, the flashing blue and red lights from the police cars outside painting the walls in grotesque, silent strokes. The front door was still open, letting in the damp, cold air. Marcus and Arthur were gone. The only sound in the room, now that the shouting and the sirens had faded, was the pathetic, animalistic sobbing of Eleanor. She was still crumpled on the floor, a broken heap of beige wool, her world reduced to the oriental rug she was clutching. Mr. Fordham stepped up beside me, quietly closing his briefcase. He put a steady, dry hand on my shoulder. "It is over, Elara." "Yes," I said. My voice was a stranger's, calm and low. I looked around the room, this house, this cage, the heavy velvet curtains, the suffocatingly ornate furniture, the portraits of Arthur's ancestors staring down with cold, judgmental eyes. This was the prison they had chosen for me, and the one they had built for themselves. My gaze landed on the coffee table, amid the chaos. The clipboard with the emergency medical power of attorney and financial guardianship papers lay discarded, the pen beside it, the document that held the key to my entire life, the one they were willing to kill for. I walked over to it. I did not hurry. I picked up the sheaf of papers. I saw the clumsy forged signature Marcus had tried to scribble at the bottom, a desperate, childish attempt to mimic my own. Fordham watched me, his expression unreadable. "Evidence?" he asked. "No," I said. "A receipt." I walked to the large, unlit fireplace at the end of the room. I pressed the ignition switch. A low whoosh filled the room as the gas logs sprang to life, the flames instantly bright and hungry. I held the papers for a moment, feeling their weight. Then, I did not rip them. I did not crumple them. I simply held them over the fire and let go. We both watched as the edges curled and browned, the black ink of the legal jargon turning to ash. I watched the fake signature, the ELARA, dissolve into nothing. It was a baptism by fire, a cleansing. "What about the assistant?" Fordham asked quietly, his back to Eleanor's weeping. "Sophie. She is gone," I said, my eyes still on the flames. "Her flight left this morning. I sent the $10,000 and the ticket to a locker at the bus station last night. Just as I promised." Fordham raised an eyebrow. "You let her go after what she did." "She was a pawn," I said, turning away from the fire. "A terrified, greedy, pregnant pawn. And she gave me the recording that sealed their fate." "Besides," I added, "the baby is not guilty. It deserves a chance at a life, even if it is far away from all of this." I walked to the front door, past the weeping woman on the floor. I did not look back at Eleanor. I did not say goodbye. I did not feel a single flicker of pity. She was just another piece of furniture in a house I was leaving behind. I stepped out onto the porch. The Seattle air was cold and sharp, smelling of rain and pine. It felt clean. I took a deep, shuddering breath, the first real breath I had taken in years. It felt like my lungs, too, were being cleansed. Fordham followed me out, closing the door softly behind us, sealing Eleanor in with the ghosts of her ambition. He stood beside me, looking out at the retreating lights of the last police car. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, frowning at the screen. "It is from the investigator," he said, reading the text. "He has one final update." "Oh," I asked, not really caring. It was done. "Ilara," he said, his voice strange. He looked up from the phone, his eyes meeting mine. "They just confirmed the reason for the wire transfers to Sophie, the ones Marcus made, before you cut him off. They were not just for her apartment. They were family support payments authorized by Arthur." I frowned. "What does that mean?" "The PI dug into her background," Fordham said, his voice low. "Sophie is not just a random assistant. She is Arthur's illegitimate daughter, from an affair he had decades ago, long before Marcus was born. Eleanor, of course, refused to ever acknowledge her existence. This entire thing, using her as Marcus's assistant, setting her up with him, it was Arthur's long game, a way to finally get his real bloodline into the family and to write them into your trust fund." I processed this, the sheer, layered toxicity of it. The father, pitting his illegitimate daughter against his legitimate son, using my money as the prize, all while the matriarch tried to plan my murder. I thought I should be shocked. I thought I should be angry. Instead, I started to smile. It was a small smile, but it was real. "So," I said, turning to face the dark, quiet street. "They were all destroying each other long before I ever stepped in. They just needed me to light the match." I looked at Fordham. "Let's go. I am thinking of a new house, something with a lot of windows. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I am so glad you are here. Please comment below and let me know where in the world you are listening from. I would love to connect and share our thoughts. Please subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and show your support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.